let me admit Sean at least. Welcome everyone. My counter was a little off there. I was outside watering my plants. Let me turn this off for now. Nope. Yeah. How's everyone doing today? Happy Friday. It's Friday. Wow, that's zoomed in. Hope everyone's. There's Robert. Admit. Hope everyone's doing well. I think Isaiah is going to be a few minutes late. He had a banking emergency. If you're watching on YouTube, if you could like the video, that'd be awesome. And start throwing in some questions. Hope everyone's doing well. Robert, did you have a question? Do you want to unmute yourself?
No, it took me a few minutes to figure out that Zoom had switched my speakers.
Yeah. So. When thankfully I use a desktop, and so things don't change very often for me. But most people, especially if you're using a laptop and you dock and this and that, anytime there's like a different device, it's like, oh, hey, you must want to use that, and switches to it, and it's bad logic in my opinion.
Well, yeah, no, I created an AutoHotkey script to change my speakers from speakers to my headphone because my wife doesn't particularly want to hear me converse, but I shut the door between my office and her space. So
yeah, I hear you. Did you have anything you're working on? Any questions? Anything specific?
I actually do. I ran into something very interesting, incidentally. I mean, when I say interesting, I couldn't figure it out. I downloaded your new snipping tool yesterday, and I run it, and it would instantly open and close, and so and instantly open and close. And then I thought, well, okay, I'll check this out. And so I downloaded earlier versions, and it ran just fine. And then I re-downloaded the same version, and it ran perfectly, the new version. So, and I compared the unzipped files, including the stuff that was in OBJ or something like that, and the bytes, everything about an online diff showed that they were identical, but for whatever reason, the first download would not run, and it's Windows.
Right.
And yes, I did reboot. I mean,
yeah, right. This is what it. Yeah, it's off and on again. Yeah, it's my go-to. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, and sometimes I think it's honestly. I mean, we make fun of Windows, but any computer system, it's just there's little nuances, right? Little things that happen, and it's just the way it is. I mean, the thing is, what are the rewards for going down a rabbit hole to really try to solve it? If it's not going to happen again, it's not very big.
No, that's one of the harder problems that I have, is trying to figure out when I'm actually going to gain from automating something, and when I'm going to just be, in order to do something one time, I could spend a lot more time trying to automate it. I mean, AutoHotkey is not my first rodeo, but
yeah, sounds like.
I realize that I have some similarities to you. I like to make the computer do things for me that I really don't want. I mean, I'm inherently lazy, and
it's one of the best traits I think of people who use AutoHotkey is that we're lazy. You know what I mean? In the sense, I always said I was stubborn in that I wouldn't do this repetitive crap. And so I found a way to automate it. You know, it wasn't because I don't even like programming, right? But I love saving time.
I understand. No, I've been working on, I do a lot of, my wife owns a bookstore and I do a lot of things with, well, I do InDesign, do a newsletter for her every couple of weeks. And there's a tremendous number of repetitive things that come up. Is she gives me a Word file that is invariably a mess beyond, and I clean that up in InDesign. So I'm working on a couple of AutoHotkey scripts to help, but it's
Well, so I hopefully I do a weekly newsletter myself. I write it in Word, and then I go to which I'll put the URL in the chat if anyone's interested. It converts Word or a rich text format into HTML, and it does it really, really well. Very, very clean, super clean. So because Word itself, yeah, you can save it HTML and it looks just horrible, right?
oh,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I would never wish that on anybody. But this one, you can plain up dump your Word doc there, and it's amazing at what a good job it does and how clear it is. The problem is, and it's limited to the number of hyperlinks you have in it. It'll want if you have over, let's say 50, I don't know the right number, it'll say, hey, you need to be a subscriber, and so of course then you just divide it up into parts, right? But I would pay for it, but it's not cheap. Their subscription thing, it's like $30 a month or something, and I'm like, I don't. For my purposes, I don't need something that bad.
well, there are invariably a lot more than 50 links in this newsletter.
Sure.
And I've been using InDesign since version 1.1. I was a very, very, well, relatively early adopter. And that's not to say that I'm an InDesign expert by any means, not by a long shot, but not adequately competent. And I also do a lot of with Adobe Premiere Pro. I take she does author interviews, and I take them and convert them into podcasts. And I clean them up a little bit, edit them, and build podcasts out of them using Premiere Pro and Audition. And again, these are things that were every one. There are a lot of repetitive tasks, and I've been doing this for a couple of years, and it's like, I always think to myself, God, I gotta figure out how. But
every week I do my newsletter. Every week I do a little more automation. I find something else to make it simpler.
I'm sure.
And it's just like, but then I'm like, all right, I got it. I'm done. I got to get it done, and I switch gears and just crank it out. Yeah, I think that's life. How you doing, Jean?
Good, thank you. Me, I'm on the other side. I work developing an application using AutoHotkey. So less on the automation side, more on the developing an app. And this week I completed I'm getting closer to version 3 of CSV Body. So this application, this CSV file editor. And I released the first beta release with messaging between, so you can automate or script the behavior of CSV Body. So give it command like split column or change your CSV file, change the delimiters, change the encapsulator characters, save it as various format. So all this can now be scripted. So if you have a repetitive task and you remember it was someone that you knew that was asking for that, Steve, his name. And so I told him at that time, maybe I would be ready with this sometime in April. So April became June.
That's how it goes, yeah.
But it's now, so I'll post the link for those that would be interested in this beta release.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's the first thing I used from you, right? Was like I actually was using it and reached out to you about a question, and then you said, hey, have you used which actually that's the other thing, Robert. If you're not using QAP, I use it a ton for my newsletter for pulling up the a lot of HTML standard stuff that I have for links to images or to posts, or pages or whatever that I use frequently. It's invaluable. His other tool, QAP.
I'm sorry. What is this tool?
quick access pop-up. I'll put the link up above my head here.
Okay.
We could spend hours. He's done a whole webinar on it.
Yeah.
A lot of webinars with you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less about CSV body. Maybe we should do something about this if you have some time. If you have time later this summer, maybe because I created a new website for CSV body. Before it was on my old code site, which is very ugly. So now I just put the link to my new CSV body website, which is a sub-site of quick access pop-up, because I have the quick access pop-up domain with HTTPS. And but I create subdomains of this site for my other projects. So that's now available for CSV body. Hi, Isaias.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, good. So your banking issue is solved?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the end, I
We know
have to
everything.
do it manually.
Yeah, we know everything about your life, no?
No, yeah. Sometimes these apps, when people build apps, they don't do it very well. So in the end, I was forced to go out and do it manually.
Okay.
The app didn't let me. So yeah. Yeah. And how is it going over here? Many questions?
Quiet this morning.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. In general,
Why don't, unless someone has a question, why don't you, just because it was such an amazing thing, the new UI automation tool.
Yeah, that was the thing I was hoping that you would summarize. I didn't have time to look at your video. I will later. No. I looked at the few first minutes, but it was 18 minutes. And at that time, I was not available for. But yeah, it would be fine. Good if you could summarize what it's doing.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you are aware of the ACC library. I think you are. This is a very old library that allowed you to pick on GUIs and programs and take a look at individual controls and give you kind of like a path for you to be able to automate that particular control, right? What happens is that sometimes the ACC library was failing because there were some things that didn't have a clear path, or many other things. Some programs were built in a way that you can access certain things as well.
Say, start back a little further, Isaias. AutoHotkey has accessed many ways to control programs, right? Especially controls, which are phenomenal. Unfortunately, those are older controls that most applications no longer use.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And then we kind of switched over. There's still other ways, right? But then there was the ACC library, which is describing that was deprecated a long time ago, and this new UI automation approach came out, and that was like 10 years ago. However, in AutoHotkey, we didn't have a great tool for actually discovering and for getting a path and knowing how to trigger. And suddenly, this
now, so it has been there for a little while. I've seen like 2 projects that have been working with it, but they always start it up and then they leave it hanging, like they don't complete it, because it's a huge thing. Okay. Now, what you have to understand, the ACC library, it was the accessibility library. So when you build Windows programs, you have these properties that you can set up on your controls and Windows that then the ACC library can target. And those accessibility targets, it was meant to help people with visual impairments or hearing impairments, so that your program could read the controls out loud for people who cannot see them, right? That was the idea behind it. But now you can actually automate stuff with it. As Joe said, that particular library was deprecated in favor of another one, which is the UIC, the UIA. And that UIA library has better control, more programs actually support it, and even newer programs with the .NET framework and other stuff can actually, they are built in a way that you can access that. So this UIA automation library is for version 1 of AutoHotkey, and it gives you kind of like implementations for the interface itself. That's what it does. And it comes with a bunch of program examples that you can take a look at, and they're very simple. That's what I'm going to just go ahead and show you how simple it is to use. Now, the first thing, of course, you have to include your library. you have to get an instance of the UIA interface object.
It's a
There
class?
yeah, it is a class. And there are several versions of it up to version 7. So there's 7 versions that you can actually load. They all build one upon the other. But usually with the basic one, you have all the options, most of the options. The newer versions do not add like too much to it. Usually what you have to do is get an element. Now, there are several ways that you can get an element, and you can get the element of the whole program, which in turn have all the children in it, or you can target a specific element in a window by using one of the functions is element from, and then you have element from handle, from point. So this one, you can give an X and Y coordinates, and it would give you the element that
Under
the
cursor,
automation
for example.
element, right? Yeah, the automation element under the cursor. But if you want to get the main element, like the whole window, in this case, you can pass it an HWND handle, which you can use with WinExist like this. You just pass it. And now this main element, then you can use several functions. And in this case, for example, the interesting function that you can use is the dump all. This dump all will give you all the children that are visible at that particular time in the GUI. So if I just go ahead and switch this to a message box, you will notice what it does. So if I run it, oh, sorry, of course, I have to run Notepad for it to work, because if not, it's not going to exist. So if I run the script, you will get a message box like this that has a list of all the controls. And you will notice that on the left side, you have kind of like a path, like the ACC library. Now, quick thing, the path that you see here is not compatible with the ACC path. So if you are using the ACC library and you use a path like that, it might not work for this particular library. But as you can see, you will get the name of the item that you want to automate. So for example, the status bar is here. You have the
Menu names.
maximize, the minimize, close buttons. And here are the menu names. You will see that the file, edit, all of them. Now notice that if the menu is not open, you cannot see the elements under the menu, because it's just what is created at that point in time. And notice that here, there are no elements. This menu is not created yet. And that's the reason why this thing couldn't actually, do it.
So
but
you have to open it so you can
Exactly.
send a
And-
click
but-
message, or
But this is the interesting part. So now that I have this list, I know what the name of the element is, or the path. I could actually pick it. I could pick on it by doing the following. I could just go ahead and from the element, instead of using the dump all function, which is just informational, I could just go ahead and use one of the find functions. You can have the find all by name, but you can have find first by name, for example. So I could use that find first by name. And I'm just going to specify the name. I said that the name was file, wasn't it? So I could find the first one element that has the name called file, and I could just go ahead and click on it. So I could just use the click function, and it would just go ahead and click it. So let me just go ahead and comment this out, and let's test it. So hold on. Let me see if this is if it is doing it. Check something. Let me double. It might be that there are other elements that are named file. Let me see something. Get text. Let me see if I'm grabbing the correct element here. So that's the other thing. No, it's blank.
And just a reminder, this is our third day of access.
Right. So I'm just playing with it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not really. But let me.
and we are live, so that's another reason for things to go wrong.
Let me double check something. So find first element. So I have the name call file, or, you know, I could do something else. Instead of finding it by name, I could use the path.
Mhm.
So if I take a look at this, the path was what for file 4.1. So I could just use the 4.1 in here, and let's just try that instead. 4.1, and then try to click on that. So let's try that. It's not clicking on it. Let me double check something. So if I remember correctly, I am having issues since yesterday with my let me double check something. I am able to dump all. I am able to find by name. Now, let me go ahead and do this. So file, and let me try current name, I think. Name, is it? And, that's the.
You could try current position. It would give numbers if it works.
No, but this is the thing. I think I'm using something wrong here.
Go back and watch our video from yesterday.
Yeah. No, but the problem is the element class. So the element class, let's just go ahead and do this. The element interface here. Right. So I have the find all. So it's the interface itself. So find by first by, oh, what am I loading then? Oh, this is the viewer. Sorry. This is the interface that I'm looking for. Right. Yeah. So this is the one first, find first by name. That's the one that I'm doing. And then what I wanted to do was current name. Yeah, that's the one, current name. So let's do this, current name. And I wanted to verify if I get the name of it. I'm not finding it. For some reason, it's not finding it right now. Or, you know what I can do? Oh, find first. Try that. There it is. So this one is grabbing it. So it was finding all by name, and it was actually probably returning a, but I'm sure that I was doing that here. So it is finding it, but for some reason I'm not able to click it. Not sure what it is.
Because I'd love to, that the find all. Can we see if that's an array and instead of
sure.
Because I'd love to. I know we didn't look at that yet. We talked about it.
So
find all. So all.
See, I would have just commented that out and written a different one, but that's just me.
Yeah. So let me just do this real quick. So if I move here, what do I get for var? Oh, here it's an array.
Cool.
So you get an array of elements. So you could go ahead and loop through it. But the
dot one
sorry?
Or brackets, put in brackets.
Yeah, I would use this, for example, current name. That would give me that should basically give me the same as before. There it is, the file. So it is finding it.
Yeah, but clicking is the
click
issue.
For that one. I'm not really sure why, but I'm gonna show you one of the examples that I had yesterday, so that that was working, and that way you will get a better idea of what is going on. So let me just 1 minute. Yeah, so it's not really clicking on it, but I could get like this. Let me try something. Document and first by name, and I want to set value. So this is a test. Let's try that. Right, so it is not actually It is finding it, but it is not really working at the moment. I'm not really sure why. I will double check later. But let me show you one of the examples that I was working with previously. So I was having Excel here. I'll just add some stuff in here. And this, yeah, if you can tell how the font was being increased here, that was done by the script. So first of all, again, as I mentioned, you get your handle, get your automation, you get your element, right? So that's from Excel. And I found an element that was called increased font size, which is this particular element right here. And I will show you how you can get those information. And then I was using the click function for it. So I was just finding it and just clicking on it, which basically, as you can tell, just goes ahead and clicks automatically 10 times because I'm just doing a loop on that. So the way how we find information about elements on the screen is by using one of the tools is called Inspect from UIA Verify, which is this tool from Microsoft, which allows you to just point with the UI automation tool selected. It allows you to just point on the screen and it would give you information about that particular item that is highlighted. And as you can tell, let me see, hold on, it's just moving around. Probably because I'm sharing my screen. You know what, that might be something because I'm sharing my screen. But here you will notice one of the options called name. And that name is the one that I'm using to find the control that I'm looking for. But there's any other, you can use any other type of those properties to find a specific element. So some of them have this control type here, or you can use the access key or the name itself. You can use many different types of ways of accessing that particular item. On the video that we were doing yesterday, we were actually using something called the automation ID property, which some of the elements have a automation ID, which would be the best because it is an identifier that you can use to target that thing. And here in the find functions, I could use an expression to find it. So let me just go ahead and show you. This is what I was doing. The expression that I was using was the find first by, and then in the expression, I just put the name of the property that I'm looking for, in this case, automation ID, an equal sign, and what I'm looking for. So the thing is that this automation ID was really long, and I had to put it in a variable,
the numbers?
That is actually the automation ID of it. So it was something like this thing was button play. That was the automation ID, the full thing. So what I did is that I broke it out into the main part that was the same for all the buttons. And then I put different buttons, the play button, the stop button. And what I did is that I looped through it and I was just clicking on them. Yeah. So then again, the concept is basic. You have to get your interface, get the element that you're looking for, and then you can find by and whatever property is that you're looking for. It could be the name, it could be the automation ID or whatever. Yeah. And after you find it, then you can do execute different functions by clicking. You can not only click, but you also can
set properties,
set the value, get the value, get the value. No. So basically, the main functions that you can do is get the value, set the value, or click. There are other options available, but not really like set font or stuff like that.
But the font is a value of the font property, isn't it? Or?
Depends. I don't know if you can. Depends on the control that you're targeting. So this right here changes basically depending on the type of control that you're looking at. But it gives you, for example, where you can click that particular item.
Mhm.
It also gives you the bounding rectangle. That means like where you can, you see this yellow thing that is being drawn?
Yeah.
It is being drawn based on this rectangle, and it is based on the screen. So if I move this to the right, the bounding rectangle might change now. So that's the point. So now it is at the 1000 something. It is because it's screen in the location on the screen at that particular point in time.
Yeah. Could you scroll down just to see the other part of the properties?
Right. You have grid view values. If it had a value like this one, so let's say this one here.
Yeah.
So that one, for example, if you go to the value, it tells you that it's a 1. Now, is it read only? No, you can actually set it and get it. And you can get other interesting things that are not useful most of the time, but you can do very interesting stuff with it when you're actually getting information out of a particular program.
Well,
now, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say is, you know, some aspects of this remind me a lot of web scraping in the sense of how I'm going to find something, you know, and identify it. There's multiple ways you can, you know, find it and, you know, an address for it in some way, right? The difference is in a web page, once you find that, you have all these things you can change, right? And this is much more kind of, now don't take this out of context, it's kind of more like how a human interacts with it. Now, this is where it's interesting, is it's, you know, it's not sending keystrokes, don't get me wrong, but a human, they can't change the font size of something, you know, in the thing, right? You might be able to detect what size the font is, but, you know, you, like Isaiah said, you can read it.
Well, you would actually have to go ahead and set the font. However, the program sets the font.
Allows you, right?
There is no, yeah, exactly.
You're
So
really kind of mimicking how a human would do it, even though it is an API, right? It's
right.
So you would open a dialog box, and in the dialog box find the control that sets the font, and then
So in this case, and I think I don't know if there was another.
Those of us who have played with the AutoHotkey controls and the fact that you can completely hide GUIs and change the fonts and everything, like, it's wild, right? You can't do that with this. It's not
right. The main example here, and that's the reason why I was not finding the document, is because that was the type. It was document type, but I was searching by name, but it was by type. But once he finds the document element, he can set the value to whatever he wants. This is a test. And what this does is that it goes ahead, opens, let me include the UIA interface.hk. And what happens is that it opens Notepad and sets the text of it as soon as you open it. If you don't have that line, you know that Notepad opens without any text in it. So this is what you get, right? But now you have access to that particular element, and you can set the value, get the value, or click on it. I remember that there was another example around that was for clicking on, let me see if it is number 2, hold on. Yeah, this is the one that clicks on the menu item.
Yeah.
So now I know why it was not working for me. And it is because it seems to be that there is an element that has the name file, but I have to find by name and the type. So I want the file, but that is a menu item, right? So when you find by both these things, then it's going to be able to kind of like click on it. So let me go ahead and do this. Now, when I click OK, it's going to click on the file menu and the save button. You see that? Cool. So it's going ahead and doing that.
Do you know if the file word is an English word? Is it an internal name or is it the localized name? So, for example, if you use the Spanish version of Windows and Notepad and me the French version,
that's
which is
good
fichier instead of file will still be the name, because if you automate something in English, you want it to work in other localization of Windows.
That is a very good question. And I will tell you that when you are dealing with this UI automation, here on the left, you know the name here, and there is, I know that there's localized control,
I've seen that,
right?
But I haven't seen localized
I don't know if
text.
like name, right? So there's content, name. But I think there is. I
hope, because it would be a big weakness.
Right. No, but the thing is that I think There is a localized type of labeled. You can have the labeled, but there, if I remember correctly, there is a way of getting the localized name of it.
But maybe file is still usable even if you are using a French version or a Spanish version. For example, if you in VBA, commands are available in English even if you are using a French version. So in VBA, the name of the functions are in English, not in French as you would use if you entered the function yourself in Excel.
What I would say, just as a programmer and in my experience, this particular interface that programs have is for automation. So I would assume that they have kind of like a standard way.
Yeah.
Now, remember, it doesn't matter if the name is not the correct one. You can use different types of things to kind of like, you can actually, when you use the find by, let me just remove this for a second. When you use the find by, so first by, you can use different stuff. Like, for example, let me do kind of like a test, quick thing here. You could use name equal and put the name like file, and then you can use and then you can put another option like type equals file menu item. And for example, you can actually, from this list of properties that I was just showing you, you can actually build an identifier that you can use name, interfaces, or, different types of properties. You just grab the property, put the equal sign, and whatever you're looking for. So you can.
Jean, do you want to, I mean, I can throw that inspect tool in our Dropbox folder if you want to try it on your system real quick.
Okay.
Right. So in general, the good thing about this particular library is that it allows you to pick inside other programs that you might otherwise not see much information about. Like, for example, the Zoom application that we're using right now is really hard to automate because you don't have access to the controls by themselves, because Zoom is using kind of like a browser control. So it is not easily, you cannot automate it easily with AutoHotkey. But if you have this UIA library, you can pick inside it and you can see the individual elements, and you can actually get IDs for them or ways to access them. And then you can go ahead and click on them or get the values of. So from the list of this chat list, well, for example, the participants list, I could get that element and get all the text that is in there, and I could build a list of the people who are inside a meeting, just like that. So it allows you to do stuff that you otherwise couldn't do with AutoHotkey by itself. That's what happens.
Right, or a lot of tools, I would say. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the other one, Isaias, is I had a couple of people post questions about using that with Chrome, and I know you mentioned the other day the person that made the first post, or someone did a follow-up because they wanted to automate Chrome using the UI automation. And someone was asking, does it, have actual DOM elements? I'd be surprised if it did, but have you looked at that yet?
Well, so not exactly. So not exactly. So basically, when you're picking at the program, you are picking at the controls. That means the windows that were created, but you do not have access to the DOM.
Because you have access to the application, but not to the content, not to the content of the page.
Now, even if you get the page itself, like the element that has all the text, you're not going to get a DOM object.
The structure.
Right,
of
exactly.
this
You cannot get the structure of it.
Well, why don't you show Chrome and show the inspection?
Right, yeah, sure. Let me show you what it looks like. So if we go ahead and open up. Right. So this is the thing here. Let's just open,
because I've used the inspect tool on it, and I'm like, wow, I can actually see things. It's cool.
Right. So you could So you could, let me see if this is active.
You're on the MSAA, yeah.
Right. So let's go ahead and try that. So now notice that I have the yellow bar is here up top, right? Now, when I go into different elements, it gets highlighted, which means that I am actually looking at the element itself. And notice that here on the right, I get the name. If it had an access key or hotkey, I would be able to see it. Now, but notice that I'm not looking at anything that has to do with the DOM. So if I select the whole window, like the whole element that is being rendered as a page, I still get the document here, but I will not get the whole DOM object in a way that you could use it as an object. Do
me a favor, inspect the search element.
Right, the search element here.
I'm curious.
Right.
Okay.
So the search element, it gives you the name, it gives you the edit, it gives you the type of control more or less. But again, you're not getting the tags, you know, the ID for it.
That one has an ID of S.
Right, exactly. So you do not get tags or classes or anything like that, because you're not looking at the DOM. You're not looking at the.
Yeah, but I'll do this with maybe even hold on. Let's do I'm gonna do a screen capture. So it's edit and search for. Now, inspect with your inspector. You'll right click on the element in Chrome and inspect.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm curious if it's somewhere it says search for what it's using, right? Like clearly.
No, well, the search. No, the search for
screen reader text. Look up what.
Oh,
right
this one. Yeah, you see that, which is screen reader. This is what I meant with accessibility.
Yeah,
again,
right.
This is for programs. This class is for allowing programs to be able to read this screen to somebody who cannot read. So this particular class is invisible. You cannot see it anywhere on the screen. And actually, even the part that says search, that's what you see, but you cannot see that particular text anywhere. It's invisible. But the one who can read it is the UIA automation tool that allows you to actually see that as a name. You notice that, right? So again, and this was not done by you, Joe. When you build the page automatically, I think WordPress does this. It automatically assigns this screen reader type of tags just for it to work.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I know I use this thing in AHK Studio, and I know Maestria didn't go through and add, you know, all this stuff. Yet I still saw things, right? I'm like, okay, a lot of this is programmatically done at some level, right?
Right. Yes.
I'm sure whether it has a name, certain things like you have to go back and add things manually, right? Or if they're just set up in a certain way. But no, someone else asked, can we click something
with this?
Yeah.
Yes.
On
yes.
a web page.
So yeah, so long as you have access to the thing, right? So long as you can highlight it, yes, you can click on it because you have access to it. And I remember there is a function. Let me double check if this library has it implemented.
Right. That was what someone had added, right? That they had.
Right. So no, well, because this one, what I'm talking about is something that when I was playing with that a long time ago, I knew that you could do it. But I'm not really sure if it is implemented here. So sometimes you cannot click on the element because the element is not set up to be clickable, but you can invoke, it's called invoke. Here, let me see. And the invoke function, you see this function here? This invoke function kind of like uses the default action for that particular object. So notice that the click function uses the invoke function. So it is doing something like this, that if you cannot click on it, right? If you can click on it, it will use the AutoHotkey click function. But if you cannot click on it, it would use a different function, which is actually part of the UIA library. And the invoke function, what it does is that it uses the default action of that element to actually click on it or hit a send, I don't know, an enter key or something that it actually performs a click automatically. So even if you cannot use the click function itself, you can use the invoke function sometimes to actually get the property, the element to be clicked or something like that. So yeah, you can click anything on screen. In my example, it was not working when I was using the click function, but you can use a different method to actually try to click on something. So again, yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with it.
And real quickly, Jean wants to demo the French thing, but I'm going to answer someone's question here. Someone was saying, "Hey, do we think we can make a macro recorder, type thing for this?" And what I said was, I just don't like the term macro recorder, but we want to have an inspection tool where you can drag it on. It'll say, "Hey, here are some ways you could identify this thing," and then basically you'd select one and say, "Do you want to get it? Do you want to set the text? Or do you want to click it?" Right? And that's something I know Aziz and I have been talking about. We're gonna build something that makes it, pretty easy.
Yeah. But what he is actually, when people talk about macros, it would be like you perform some steps and the thing is recording the steps, and then it will just redo that. So the inspector tool would give you the code or the things that you want to, but you would have to do it yourself. You will have to write a script that clicks for you.
It's
while
similar to like automate my task, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You do this, and then you just do the steps yourself, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's
Some people might want just to have it done it automatically, like I just want to click here and then go there, and the program is kind of like recording that, and then in the end when you press play it would just do the steps. But the problem with macro recorders is that as they're just step by step, they're not really smart about certain things, so they might mindlessly perform the actions and it would do a mess if you do not have some logic on it. And that's the reason why we actually prefer to get the code, so then we can add some logic to it and not perform the actions just whenever.
Someday, someone will make one, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I'll
That's
have to
right.
reach out to, I can't remember his name, Rafidi. I can't. The pullover for the pullover macro recorder, and point him to this overall approach and ask him if he's interested in
Yeah.
the pullover macro recorder to using it, because I could see him being into that. Jean, why don't you go ahead and show us your
Yes.
France?
I didn't like what I saw.
He didn't like it.
So here you have a block note in French, which is notepad in English, the file menu, the edit menu.
Right.
And if we look at the name here, the name is fichier, which is the French name.
Exactly.
And I don't see any way to code something that would work both on the French and on an English Windows at first, at least.
Here's the thing, John, which is interesting, because the inspect tool, it's from Microsoft, right?
Right.
They don't have a quote unquote path with the numbers.
Hold on. Right. Sorry. Can you try? You see the first drop down here on the left? It says MSAA. Can you switch that to UI automation?
Okay.
Try again. Let's see what you can get. Still like
more
that.
stuff, but
yeah,
still
it's different. It's still in thing. But Joe was talking about something about the
well, the ID numbers you were showing in the discovery tool, the
path, right?
Yeah, the path, so to speak, and that one, that's what might help bridge that for you. It's basically creating an index.
What I'm more interested
assuming
in
it would
right
be
now,
fixed from one session to the other and fixed over versions.
Oh, well, yeah,
it is. But the one that I'm actually kind of interested in right now, can you take a screenshot of this particular thing right here and close? So if you can close Notepad and reopen it. I don't know if that number switches every time it runs. Can you go to Fichier again? So here we go. What is the number here? So it says
same number.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. Oh no, it's not. The first part is not the same.
Right.
Only the end is the same.
Only the
or
end.
even not. No,
not even the end.
Not the same at all. So yeah, it's a runtime thing.
Right.
So you cannot rely on that.
Now I do note that the 4.2 is the same. Can you go to other elements and see if they start with 4.2? Yeah, they start with 4.2.
Yeah.
Right. So again, I can get an ID when it is running. Okay. So when it is running, this ID is not going to change when it is running, which you might want to try to do that. but again, you would need to get the position, or you can list all the ones that are elements of, so you can get all the menu elements, for example, and get a list of them.
Mhm.
And I know that they will always be actually in the same location, the same. So let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Show you what I mean by that. So for example, let me just create a new one. Let's just put this part right here real quick, because I don't want to type all that again. Let's start with notepad.exe, and let me run it. So now what I could do is UI automation element from handle. That would be the HWD, and now that's going to be notepad. And now notepad. Oh, sorry. I want to find.
Jean says it'll be troubling with the different languages. To me, that's just an upsell. You know, we get to charge more.
Yeah, but I could use the find all by expression, what I mentioned before, and I would use the menu item. I think it is menu item.
Put in.
So that would be the type, I think. Let me go ahead and verify that with the inspector real quick. So so the UI automation gives me that file. Yeah, it's menu item, localized control type. There we go. Or you can use kind of like an ID. It usually has kind of, for those type of things, control type, it has kind of like an ID or something. This number here, you can use that. But what I'm trying to get at is that I think you can get an array of, sorry. There we go. And let me see what this does. Here we go. Here we go. What does the variable have?
We got a little over 5 minutes left, by the way.
Right. It gave me an object, not a. Yeah. So, oh, because I have to remove that. Oh, it gave me an empty object there. Localized control type equal menu item. Let me try something by type. Menu item. Let me see what that does. Yeah, so I got an array here, and I've got different elements. And for each of the elements, I could, so for example, if I want to know what all the menu items are, independent of the language, I could use this, and it's very likely that the first, the position of those items is always going to be the same.
Yeah, it will.
The other thing I was going to say was, because you mentioned, I know the other day we were doing this, Isaias, you could have ors, right? Couldn't we use the different translations in the or?
Yeah, sure.
But you never know on which localization.
Yeah, that's the problem. There are going to be way too many.
Hundreds of localizations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God, you bunch of naysayers.
Current.
So maybe there are solutions to that, but at first I would put a warning for those planning to do something that would be used on different localization of
this
Windows.
This is something that I'm not really familiar with how it's going to look like, but look at that. The number 2 is file, right? Mm-hmm. The first one was system, right?
Which is a system menu, maybe.
Right. That is
left.
actually, yeah, that's the one that you can click.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, if I close Notepad and reopen it, and I go ahead and run it again, it will always be in the same.
Yeah.
So I know that
localization will not change the position of things. It will
exactly
change the text. It will change the hotkey, the shortcut. Alt F, for example, instead of something else.
That's a very interesting part as well, because the inspect tool, when you're looking at this thing,
Yeah, it tells you
it
the
might
shortcut.
gives you the access.
Key, which is not
Right.
which will not be the same different on your localization.
It can change.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it does
right,
change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
right.
cannot rely
Okay.
on that.
Okay. But again, as I mentioned, there are different ways of doing this, and actually, you can either use a combination of properties, or as I just did, you by logic, you would have to actually find out.
Yeah, but it's more
the
work.
position.
You
It is
charge
a little
more,
bit.
as you said. You charge more. But when
It
you
is a
do
little bit more
freeware,
charged.
it doesn't care. You don't care
Right.
about.
Now,
I can charge double the price of my regular
right.
price.
in this particular instance, for example, you do not have, oh, look at that, automation ID. You might find an automation ID there, okay? You see this 15 there?
Yeah.
That number never changes in different languages, that's for sure. So if you go to your version
So
right
you
now,
need to know the parent maybe and then find the children, or?
So no. So if you go on your screen right now and you
Yeah.
put the automation thing with the yellow thing here, right? If you're targeting this section, this document section,
Yeah,
the automation ID should be 15. It should be the same.
the file
let me-
is there, but there is no for file. There is
Exactly.
no ID
That's
for
what I
the
was going to
menu.
say.
Yeah.
Not all of them have an ID, but this automation ID is something that is totally language independent, is something I would always try to target the automation ID if I can. That's
Yeah.
the main thing that I would do. But if there is no automation ID, again, there are
opened the
other
Save
ways
As
that you
dialog
can
box
do.
to see if I would find IDs in the different part of it.
Right.
And there's no much of it. Yeah, 414. If you open the Save As,
Right. The save
yeah,
as
Save
button,
As, and you click
you
the.
get an automation ID for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically,
yeah, but I mean, if you open the dialog box
right.
and then you click on document, this PC document, you know, the path at the top of your window.
So this path here.
This path. So my ID is 41477.
Hold on, let me see. So for the path,
Yeah. I'm
oh,
clicking
this one says 1001.
But I click inside. Maybe you click
Okay,
inside.
all right. Oh yeah, 41477.
Then it's the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
again, the automation IDs
that could
are
be a solution.
they're very reliable if you have them.
Yeah.
Right. That's the first thing.
And
Second
maybe
of
there are
all,
other ways for the menus or for other things.
I would tell you something. Be careful with this. You have to make sure that you are in the correct window, because that automation ID there might not be
It's
present.
just for Save As. Yeah.
Yeah, but it might not be present when you are trying to automate. So for example, if it is not selected, if it is like this, that 4740, the four,
that's another number.
might not be there, I would assume, because there's
if you don't click in it, it's if you
right. So for example, here on the menu, if you want to automate this button here, it says that the automation ID, no, well, in my case, it says the automation ID is 4. So for number 4 here, automation ID number 4, I don't think I can just go ahead and click that. Yeah, I could use, let me try it, because I could just say
to find by automation
find
ID.
by, so find by
ID or
no, you don't have that particular, no, what you have is this, you have the find, notepad dot find by, so it's by, you can have find first by, and then the expression is
would
going to
build
be
an expression that would say
automation
equal
ID equal 4, right? And then I would try to click get current name. Let me see if I could get it like that, even if it is not visible. And that's the thing. I'm not sure. I don't think you can,
because the menu is not open necessarily.
Exactly. I don't think. Oh, but look at, no, this is the first part of the code here.
We got to run here.
Right.
And
but basically that's what I mentioned. So the automation ID is not going to show up because it's not visible. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. But yeah,
I'll tell you my conclusion is the best to do automation is when you control both parts of the automation. That's my experience with CSV Buddy. So I have my application and I have a messenger that automates my application, but I control both parts of it.
parts,
So that's
yeah.
the ideal situation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't do Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word, so
Unfortunately,
I can't control that part.
But in this case, what you would do is in your automation, you're going to be clicking on stuff that are visible, right? So you know that the file, the menu is there. You click on the menu. When the menu shows up, and you can
Then
actually,
you
there's
can
a
go to
function.
next step.
There's a function that says wait for element.
Yeah.
So you just wait for the element to exist before you click on the next one. So you can actually do the steps to automate it. And as you know the IDs, you would use the IDs instead of names and stuff. But in general, yes, I know that is a little bit more difficult. But again, remember, this is going to help you automate programs that you otherwise couldn't automate anyways. So
Yeah,
it just gives you a little bit more control over something that you didn't have any control before.
Yeah, very powerful.
So yeah, we're gonna be running to the other section. We have another hour for the members now, so we're gonna be talking later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put the link here. Matthew, it sounds like maybe you thought you were a member, or you say you're not, so I don't know. Yeah, the one we're jumping to right now is for the heroes. It's $6 right now on sale, $6 a month if you're interested. But we got to run. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.